Hi. Before we turn the house music off, is there anybody who actually knows what we were playing and why we were playing it? Anyone? It is Brian Eno's 1978 ambient classic, Music for Airports. Thank you very much. You can collect your prize at the end. Welcome, everybody. My name is Adam Rubin. I am the Senior Director of Public Engagement here at the Chicago Architecture Center, and we are very happy to welcome you all here on a Friday night for Transforming O'Hare to hear about this project forthcoming that is going to affect all of our lives as Chicagoans, affect the lives of people who are passing through Chicago, and really is one of these types of buildings that just has an incredible impact on so many people and so much potential to do really remarkable work that changes the way that we travel and spend time in communal space and all of that. So we simulated by having you all here for an extended waiting time in our cafe space. So thank you for everybody for your patience. If having glasses of wine wasn't your thing and you were in here, we will get the show on the road now. So glad to have you all here on a Friday. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If this is your first time here, the Chicago Architecture Center, our mission is to inspire people to discover why design matters. Very broadly. So how do we accomplish this mission? We do it through several bodies of educational work. One of these pillars is youth education, which includes our teen cohorts, competitions, our Girls Build with an exclamation point program, Engineering Fest serves over 1,000 youth every year. We've got summer camps. We have a civics advocacy and public resources initiative so we can help share information on topics from historic preservation to sustainable construction by lending our expertise to the media and to educational institutions near and far. We work with a lot of universities as well. We have public programs like the one that you're experiencing right this second. We also have book talks and festivals and panel discussions like this. We have exhibitions like the one that we just opened yesterday, our 50th anniversary of Chicago Women in Architecture exhibit, which is wonderful. If you're contributed to it and you're in the audience, thank you. It's really great work. So if you got a chance to see it today, great. If not, please come back. And of course, our tour program, including the world famous architectural river cruise and more than 70 bus and walking tours throughout Chicago's neighborhoods. And most importantly, the revenue of these tours helps to support our educational programs for Chicago youth, something that really none of the other companies can claim. So, Open House Chicago is coming right up on the weekend of October 19th and 20th. It's going to be awesome this year. We've got over 170 sites committed, all kinds of public programs and activations and things that are going on. Ask me about it later. I'm one of the team members who puts it together. It's going to be really cool. So October 9th and 20th, put it on your calendar. The Chicago Architecture Center commits to sharing an honest and inclusive and unbroken story about Chicago's architecture and design across generations. And this is a story that's informed by the many communities who gave and continue to give the city its unique sense of place. And this is a story that necessarily includes these indigenous nations who lived and traveled and traded and built here long before settlers incorporated Chicago, many of whose descendants still proudly call our city home, especially right where we are right now. A little bit more. Much of what we do honors Chicago's rich architecture history, and it's our keystone. Our cruise and tours are a Chicago institution and focus on the building and rebuilding of our great city. That's the past. Currently, we strive to create dialogues on current issues like we're doing tonight. And more than ever, we are focusing much of our program on developing the future of designers in our city and empowering everyday citizens, even those who didn't go to architecture school, to take part in creating the cities that they want and deserve to have. So with all of that, thank you again for everybody who's here today. Every program that you attend and every ticket that you purchase helps to support these efforts, so you are a necessary part of this endeavor. So I'm going to continue on to tonight's program and tell you a little bit how this is going to work. You are going to see a presentation not one after another, but three folks who have been involved in this project collaboratively together, who will take you through some images of the airport project. They'll all be passing the mic around or trading turns anyway. We will then take a pause. Ann Thompson, Ann, can you raise your hand? Ann Thompson, ladies and gentlemen, is going to come to the stage, and she will moderate a discussion afterwards with some questions, and then take some Q&A from the audience towards the end. We'll keep it to a tight hour, so it should be done by 7:30. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the folks who are on the stage tonight. So quickly, Ann, who's not on the stage tonight, but bear with me on that, is the Executive Vice President of Architecture and Design at Related Midwest. She is also a past board chair and sustaining board member of the Chicago Architecture Center, and a very familiar and friendly face around these climbs. Barrett Peterson. Barrett, raise your hand. Hi, Barrett. Is an architect at the Chicago firm of Ross Barney Architects. He attended Iowa State, where he received a bachelor's degree in community and regional planning and a master's in architecture. His broad design sensibility is informed by experience working on projects including buildings at the University of Iowa, high-rise residential buildings, and urban design in the Middle East. Ryan, please raise your hand. Ryan Culligan is a design principal at Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. His projects include 400 Lakeshore Drive, as well as One Bangkok, a 20 million square foot development in the heart of Thailand's capital city. Whoa. For the two concourses at O'Hare, Ryan has developed a design concept around health, wellness, and bringing nature inside to improve the passenger experience. And he had some wonderful comparative slides to show me earlier that I'm excited that he'll get to share with you in just a minute. And of course, Juan Gabriel Moreno is an award-winning architect and the president and founder of JGMA. He comes with over 30 years of experience and has crafted an extensive portfolio of many provocative works, including a variety of public and private projects, both in the United States and internationally. Juan, as well, is a trustee of the Chicago Architecture Center. He is an inaugural member of the Chicago Committee on Design. He is a former Chicago Landmarks Commissioner. Very cool. And you don't need to hear too much more from me anymore. So thank you for bearing with me in the introductions. Let's get this show on the road. And before we hear from all of you, we're going to hear from one other familiar face.
Hello, I'm Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's discussion hosted by the Chicago Architecture Center on the design of the Satellite Concourse 1 at O'Hare International Airport. Chicago has long been a city renowned for its rich architectural heritage, the city that invented the skyscraper and home to the greatest skyline on the planet. My administration's work on the transformative O'Hare 21 modernization program is a continuation of this great heritage. This new Satellite Concourse is not simply a functional addition to our greatest economic engine. It is a reflection of our commitment to continue to push the boundaries of design and engineering. It will also help to enhance the passenger experience with modern amenities, sustainable features, and cutting-edge technology, all while maintaining Chicago's architectural legacy and setting new standards for excellence in airport design. This project is also a testament to the collaborative spirit of our city, bringing together some of the brightest minds in architecture, engineering, aviation, and government. In the months to come, we'll talk even more about the future of O'Hare and the incredible designs in store for our new O'Hare Global Terminal, the centerpiece of the O'Hare 21 project. I want to thank our airline partners for their continued commitment to this city, the hardworking staff at the Chicago Department of Aviation, and their diverse team of consultants for their dedication to this project, and our esteemed design team for their insights and expertise. I also want to thank the Chicago Architecture Center for hosting this important discussion and for your continued commitment to promote and celebrate Chicago's architecture and urban design. And most importantly, thank you all for being here and sharing your interest in the transformation of O'Hare International Airport. Your support and engagement are crucial as we embark on this exciting journey. Enjoy the discussion, and thank you for being a part of this incredible endeavor.
It's hard to follow the mayor. I'll first start by thanking you all for choosing to spend your Friday evening with us. We have a slide deck prepared to share with you some of the designs that we're really excited about for the new Satellite Concourse at O'Hare. I see a bunch of unfamiliar faces in the crowd, and also a significant number of people on the team that have been designing it with us in these last few years. I also see a contingent from the city, and it has been truly a pleasure collaborating with the many stakeholders, the consultants and experts that are represented by the logos and images that you see on the screen right now. I don't think that there's been any blood, but there has certainly been a few tears and sweat shed in these last few years as we've developed this, and we're really proud to talk about this now in a public way. The O'Hare Airport, use this? Okay. The O'Hare Airport has a really proud legacy and history that you may or may not be familiar with. Originally, it was called Orchard Place. It was a German-American agricultural kind of community. Just in the kind of onset of the World War II, it turned into basically a fabrication plant for C-54 transport planes. Directly after the war, the airport was repurposed as the first major airport to be built following World War II. That airport, for years, decades, was the most popular airport in the world by volume. It was a pioneer in a number of ways. The first concourse, literally the first concourse, was at O'Hare. The first jet bridge, the apparatus that connects passengers from building to airplane, was at O'Hare. It's the first place in which highways connected to an airport. It's truly a trailblazer. In this regard, and with the ambition to connect O'Hare, to champion and reflect some of the things that make Chicago so special, we've tried to approach the design in a way that felt respectful of that tradition and continues it with innovation and a mindfulness towards the past and future. The concept for the design for the satellite is fundamentally rooted in this idea of Orchard Place. ORD, the call letters for the airport, are reflective of the orchard, right? And when you think about what an orchard means, it's in many ways the marriage of human ingenuity, productivity, and nature. The rhythmic rows and columns of trees create these beautiful vistas that kind of extend in different directions, create canopies of leaves, letting dappled light in. It's both structured and natural, and that balance, that juxtaposition to us was inspiring, and in many ways underpinned our design ambitions for this project. There is a lot to learn from nature, as we all know, both in its efficiency and its beauty. And the tree columns that you can see here, which are on the southern end of the concourse, function in many ways like trees. They take large spans and loads, concentrate them into single points, and bring them down in we think, an elegant way. We're going to talk a little bit about this and kind of deconstruct the design so that you can hopefully appreciate some of the thoughts behind the development of it and someday appreciate it in person. Before we do, we thought it would be worthwhile to talk from each of our points of view as designers that come with different perspectives and different priorities about some of the things that we bring to this project This is the Kansas City International Airport, one of the last airports to open in the United States. It's a simple building, but it's designed with care. SOM designed it and engineered it. It incorporates timber elements throughout in a sparing way, but in a way that we think elevates the passenger experience and makes passengers feel, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more human, because they're surrounded by these natural environments. This is a construction photograph of another airport recently opened on the other side of the world. This is in Bangalore, India. We designed and engineered it, and when you look at it, if you're familiar with architecture and engineering, you might not be impressed with the structural gymnastics at play here. It's a simple superstructure. It's stripped down to the bare essentials. It's almost like a butler building in a lot of ways. And here the idea was to design and engineer a building that could be built very quickly and on a very tight budget, and to implement a design strategy that emphasized all of the special spaces and the parts where people most appreciate them. In the terminal and the concourse, with these finishes that are pulled from materials of the region and that capture the spirit of space. If you're going to design an airport in Bangalore or an airport in Chicago, it better reflect the place that it's in. It should not be anonymous, and it should celebrate the things that make that place special as a gateway, really, to the world.
So like Ryan said, we've selected a couple projects that embody some of the design strategies that we're implementing at O'Hare. And for a lot of architectural projects, we draw from the context and history to help us kind of shape spaces and tell stories. And so, here, this project that our office is currently undertaking is DuSable Park here in Chicago, and it's really going to tell the story of John Baptiste DuSable, who was the first non-native permanent settler to the city of Chicago. And the design will ultimately be a representation of his life. And so we've taken kind of aspects of this idea of storytelling and obviously brought it into our designs for O'Hare. And again, like Ryan mentioned, drawing from some of the agrarian roots of Chicago, again, to help us with that placemaking. But similar to this project and the O'Hare Concourses, is these two projects are really gateways to the city. And in many ways, they will serve as some of the first impressions to visitors and travelers as they come to the city of Chicago. And so part of this concourse project too is the task of ours is to create vibrant public space. And to really create a successful public space, it needs to be accessible, engaging. It needs to foster social interaction. It also needs to spark curiosity. And this project, which I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with, it kind of like does all of those things, and it's partially successful because it blends and layers a lot of different uses. So here it's city infrastructure, it's recreational area, it's public park, it's business frontage, and those all kind of coalesce to create a rich and vibrant space that people want to spend time and interact with. And we feel like we have a similar opportunity here on the Concourse projects as well, where there's going to be a lot of different circulation routes. There's going to be a physical connection to Concourse C. There's going to be retail, concessions, and amenity, and we think that we can leverage some of this to create some really like stimulating and vibrant public spaces, that don't just go and check the box of the programmatic functionalities, but go beyond that to kind of be more enriching spaces. So we've also taken cues from projects like our Cermak station on the Green Line, and this is a typology which can be typically mundane in a transient experience, but we're kind of using some of the same cues from this, is like expressive structure, abundant natural light, visual connection to the city beyond. And we're using this to inspire and use a through line for every space in this concourse is part of a whole. And so it's this holistic experience that, we're trying to elevate all of these spaces that passengers are gonna be within, and there's, kind of like no space is too small and gonna be left untouched here. And then sustainability is a huge aspiration of this project as well. This is also another Chicago project, our McDonald's flagship store, which kind of increased the natural green space on this existing site. It's a LEED platinum building. It used a lot of natural materials. Again, access to the exterior and and a lot of vegetation, which again, we're bringing a lot of these same ideas to the concourse projects as well.
And hopefully you can hear. Much better. The other thing you heard from the mayor was the importance of architecture innovation in our city, and know that it's not lost on us how incredible and what an honor this is for us as architects. You look at the legacy of firms, Helmut Jahn, Perkins and Will, Ralph Johnson, and even I found it kind of interesting just weaving the CAC in the current exhibit, and the fact that Gertrude Kurbis was one of the architects at the airport, that sometimes that's forgotten, but to be a part of that legacy is not lost on us. And also, you know, it's a credit to the city and Department of Aviation to raise the bar on this project for all of us, that architecture innovation had to be reinforced from the beginning, that the notion that a project at the airport has to celebrate flight, that was not lost on this team. And even for us at JGMA, certainly the wonderful collaboration with our partners here, but the opportunity to work on other projects at the airport. We're leading the terminal improvements at Terminal 5, and the notion that we recognize we're touching history. And what do we do with that? How do you still honor that, move forward? It's a wonderful, wonderful challenge that is not lost on any of us, and an incredible opportunity. And the other is, again, this stems from the mandate from the city, is how do you also, in this incredible international setting that is an airport, instill a tapestry of our 77 neighborhoods? And I think it's wonderful that the three firms here get a chance to talk about that, because that is at the core of our work as well. Our work here in Chicago's neighborhoods, and the idea that you can bring that to the concourse is not lost on us either. This project in particular is for Northeastern Illinois University. Many of you may know it, El Centro. But even if you just try to take a piece of that, and the idea that you are touching the psychology of travelers, sometimes an airport can feel imposing. Those individuals that have never been to Chicago in their lives, or in some cases the United States, this is what they first touch and feel. And how can you make them feel good? Make them feel welcome. We are a welcoming city, and that plays a role in what we're exploring in the design of the airport. With that, I'll pass it back.
We're talking about the building that says Satellite 1. This is an image that explains the long-term growth pattern and plan for the larger O'Hare expansion. There is an ecosystem of designers and consultants working hand in glove with the city to make sure that this expansion is one that's cohesive and that follows this legacy and an innovative spirit, as Juan was describing. I promised to come back to this image, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on it to talk about some of the design ideas present that we think are really strong. The width of the concourse is 150 feet. It's a long span. It is difficult to structure conventionally. When you have long spans, there are a number of ways you can deal with that span, and it's you drop down a bunch of columns, or you have a long span beam structure or truss that allows for complete flexibility below, but that often has a high carbon content or price. If you were to structure that span with conventional columns, you'd end up with something that's like this. It's a column spaced roughly at every 30 feet, and vertical supports that extend down through the floor and into foundations. There are 8 interior columns per typical bay of the concourse. What the tree columns do is they allow for the support points at the roof structure to be identical to that conventional column grid, but to collect all of those loads into singular points and then bring them down in just 2 locations. And this has significant benefit for a number of reasons. We would call it a win-win design proposition, in which that it reduces the number of interior columns, so it's much more flexible. Long-term into the future, 50 years from now, 75 years from now, there are many more versions of what you might see on this image in the way that the interior space can be deployed, because those columns are not impediments to alteration. And it allows for what we think is an elegant way to structure that long span for multiple functions. This is what's called a sterile corridor. So when you travel internationally and you fly back to Chicago, you don't just get off your plane and then mix around with the general population, because you haven't yet gone through immigration, customs, border control. You travel along what's called the sterile corridor until you meet that customs processing area. And in Satellite 1, those international travelers are going to walk along this corridor. So you're walking above the hold rooms, or sometimes called gate lounges, below, kind of almost through the canopy of tree columns, looking down onto the goings-on below in a way that we think is pretty neat. Those tree columns are actually supporting this sterile corridor by hanging it from above. It's like a floating corridor that is driving through the space. It's a little like, like look ma, no hands. What that allows for is a gate lounge environment, these hold rooms that have, we think, lots of character, and that takes the experience of travel and elevates it by making it fundamentally more comfortable. If you think for a second about your travel experiences, except for at O'Hare, you might think a little bit about anxiety and rushing to get to your gate, and maybe spaces that have bright fluorescent lights or hard surfaces or body odors. One of the things that we're trying to do with our design is to make it feel a little bit more like home, make it a little bit more comfortable. It has to do with materials, it has to do with lighting, it has to do with space. One of the things that we took inspiration from when kind of picking our color palette was to look to the nature that has defined the Midwestern landscapes. And nature teaches us a lot of things, both in the structure of columns of trees, and also our eyes are conditioned to react favorably to shades of green. Science tells us that views out to nature make us literally happier. And so if you look around here in the Chicago Architecture Center, I'm sure that a bunch of you are design nerds like us. If you walk around the city of Chicago with your eyes peeled open, you'll see on the facades of the buildings throughout this legacy of building ornamentation, again, rooted in a representation of an agrarian past. You see like corn cobs decorating the terracotta of the towers in downtown. The kind of tradition of Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright, represented in some of these images here. Now going back to that hold room, that gate lounge, we think that there's a kind of a contemporary interpretation of that here, that the colors are almost like in Photoshop, an eyedropper touching each of the elements of a prairie, impacting the colors of the seats or the colors of the ceiling. The lighting is also intentionally engineered and designed to be comfortable. So during daytime, it uses as little artificial light as possible and as much ambient daylight as possible. Where at nighttime, the light levels are intentionally brought down a little bit to be a little bit more comfortable. If you've ever been on a long haul flight and you get off the plane and then you see those you're blasted by that fluorescent lighting, it is discomforting. And so the idea here is to kind of hold your hand through the arrival process so it's just a little bit more comfortable. We've tuned the amount of glass in the facade, both mindful of cost, frankly, and energy performance, while driving up as much daylight autonomy as possible. Daylight autonomy is basically a way to describe how much a space can be lit without using artificial lights. So 90% of our hold rooms during the day can be lit without lighting. The space has also been designed, you can see this kind of like, arched roof, to minimize the amount of eastern and western exposures. If you think about the way that the sun travels through the sky, in the east and west, the sun is often quite low. It'll come deep into the space. And so by pinching the facades down on those eastern and western exposures, you won't have those moments when sitting in these chairs where you're being blinded by the sun, because it's been tuned to shield that sun to make it more comfortable. In addition, this is one of those win-win design ideas. The surface area decreases compared to what we would call a baseline profile. Okay, so imagine you didn't have this arch and it was just a box. Okay? That baseline profile, the same area, is going to inevitably have different characteristics, different surface area, different volume. And that surface area has a direct impact on embodied carbon, which is ever more important these days. The gradient there shows the delta between the interior volume of the shape of the design and the shape of that baseline volume. And that has a direct impact on the cooling and heating loads that you can see on the bottom there, which means you're spending much less money on an annual basis to heat or cool the building, and also using less carbon to do it. It also means you have less glazing area, 70% less glazing area compared to that boxes, which has a huge impact, again, on cost and carbon. The building from outside will look something like this. And you can see that there are a suite of sustainable features that operate at the building level, at the human level, that we think are going to make this building a trailblazer with respect to sustainable technology incorporated into the design. Go back into the space for a second. We're going to talk a little bit about some maybe more abstract themes and the importance of what an airport means to a city and to communicating values and to, let's say, equity. This is an amazing fact. If you train your eye to the top row here, so some familiar museums, 3 of the most popular museums in the world by volume: the Louvre, the Met, the Smithsonian, and then for those of you Chicagoans, the Art Institute. So the individual people that move through those museums on an annual basis, in aggregate, those 4 museums experience about 20 million people in 2023. Now think about like what museums do for culture in the world. They are our repositories for information, to exchange ideas, to connect back to the past. And think about what the potential is of airports through that lens. When you look at the bottom number, 74 million passengers pass through O'Hare in that same period of time. And so by doing simple things and by treating design and these spaces carefully, hopefully through some of the ways that we have, it has the opportunity to be a platform to communicate, on a global stage, some of the things that we think are special about Chicago architecture and culture and many other things. And with that, I'm going to pass this off to Barrett and to Juan. Thanks.
And so in that same vein of equity, these next series of images are essentially things that we're trying not to do and subject people within this space. And these are some existing hold rooms around the world which are getting characterized by some awkward hold room furniture layouts, low ceilings, beige placelessness, kind of areas that aren't tied to its context, overcrowded hold rooms that, again, don't really have a clear delineation between circulation and some of those seating layouts. And then again, rather than that, these are our tasks and our marching orders to kind of create spaces that are more similar to this, like bright, large, light-filled spaces. Again, supplemented by art. Here's the multimodal facility, which is already on O'Hare's campus. We worked on this project with Yaster Gates, who was the curator for the permanent art collection works here. And then again, on the left-hand side, these are some of the, kind of like typical cases of some hold rooms throughout the world. Again, like it's circulation and the seating are mashed together. There's not kind of like really clear planning when it came to laying these spaces out. There's no access to the exterior views. There's no natural lighting, and contrasting to that, to the spaces on the right, which we're creating here. And we think with this rigorous approach that we've taken to planning out the concourse, kind of stacking up the program in the ways that we are right now, it's going to have some impacts on creating a clarity for wayfinding for passengers, kind of reinforcing the comfort of these spaces. Like Ryan mentioned, we've also tried to kind of put space where it's going to be most impactful, and so in these hold rooms, they're going to be these broad, expansive spaces that are comfortable for people to occupy and spend time in.
I want to continue with the theme of equity and how it informs all of our work and how it plays a role at O'Hare. The notion, most importantly, is that architecture is for all. Everybody that comes to the airport, the idea that this is for everyone. Doesn't matter your socioeconomic condition. That is incredibly important to us. So that you can take moments like this. This is a middle school in a predominantly Latino and African American community where we had the students tell us they're tired of being invisible. Well, then how can the work react to it? How can we help with that and make them feel visible? There's always a line I will never forget from a sixth grader that told me, I'm tired of not being able to see and not being seen. So that impacts us, informs our work, and is the thread that leads us in our work at the airport. And the notion of how can you make somebody feel good before they step into a place? Again, coming back to the psychology piece that I was mentioning, this is a clinic. We were challenged by the CEO on this clinic. Can architecture make somebody feel better before they see a doctor? Well, absolutely. Best example that I have is sitting in the back row, joining me, my son, Evan. This is where his pediatrician is. Before this building was built, we took him to another facility owned by the same people that didn't have this kind of same level of care, and he used to cry. When he stepped in this one for the first time, his words were, "Papi, that doesn't feel like a clinic." That's when you know architecture is impacting in the right way. And finally, you looked up, mijito, you're finally looking at your dad. Good word. I see you back there. I see you. And then lastly, I think, the other aspects that are a common bond in our firms is that we do care about architecture innovation. We love this city. We are committed to this city. For us at JGMA, we were recipients of one of the Invest Southwest projects in Humboldt Park that, keep your fingers crossed for me, people, but in a matter of days, we'll be closing on the project. The project is a landmark bank that has been empty in Humboldt Park. It will become our home for JGMA, so we will be part of that neighborhood, a Chicago public library, and affordable housing. So know that the city has entrusted some partners on this project that have a deep love for Chicago and a care in such a way that we want to be there and be a part of making an incredible difference, so we leave a positive impact on everybody that only seems to think about Chicago in a negative light. Thank you.
That's on, okay. Well, first of all, let me just say what a pleasure it is to share this stage with three gentlemen who represent firms I have worked with over the course of my tenure at Related. And I can safely say they are doing some of the best and most innovative work in Chicago and throughout the country. So it's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you. So I'd like to pick up on a topic that you talked about a little bit in the presentation, and that is this, this idea of building on the architectural legacy of Chicago. You talked about that a little bit in the presentation. You also talked about the reference point of the orchard as the genesis of the design. I'd certainly be interested in expanding on that as a topic if there are other ways in which you're making that connection. But I'm also kind of interested in how you thought about that in a project like this that, you know, serves 72 million plus visitors a year, and you're talking about a place that welcomes Chicagoans home, but is also kind of a symbol of the city to, I'm assuming, 50 million of those are people not from Chicago, and how you thought about that with both of those audiences.
It's a great question. I'm not originally Chicagoan. I'm from New York, which has an architectural history of its own. But when I moved to Chicago about 10 years ago, one of the things that jumped out to me was that every epoch of architectural kind of history in the United States was present in the city in a way that was really unique. And there's a stylistic difference that I'm sure you all know and appreciate as you look through the decades of some of the icons of architecture in Chicago, but there's a couple of common threads that I hope, is present in our design. And one of them I'd say is innovation that's fundamentally rooted in honesty and efficiency. Some of the buildings here in Chicago that are known around the world were designed and engineered in a way that was reductivist first. And what I mean by that is everyone knows, I'm sure, the story of Sears or Willis and the shaping of the building and the way that the bundles are designed as a way to mitigate wind forces. It's an innovation for going very tall that learned through an economy of means with actually very little structure. You can shape the building by doing more with less, right? And I think that that is one of the themes of the design for the concourse that I think we're particularly proud of, which is that its identity is completely interrelated with this ambition to have an honest expression that is trying to do more with less. You build less carbon, more comfort, better experience, and we think that that is something that's kind of quintessentially Chicago, independent of stylistic differences, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of embodying the spirit of Chicago
I hope
in
so.
all pieces of it. I think you
so,
have.
yeah.
Barrett, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. And disclaimer, I'm also not a native Chicagoan either. But I mean, I kind of echo a lot of the same sentiments. I'm lived in the Midwest my entire life from Iowa, and so there is this humbleness, hardworking nature to the Midwest and Chicago. And again, I think Chicago's had that legacy as well. And I think because of that, Chicago is kind of like a muscular city. Mm-hmm. And again, like to a lot of the same points Ryan said too, structurally expressive, but in some ways where you're not hiding it behind ornamentation or kind of like needless facade. It's expressed because it's honest, and it's kind of showing you how the building works. And a lot of what we're doing on the concourse is, I mean, it is exactly that. I mean, you've got the tree canopy structure, which again is kind of like up front. It's very seen in the hold rooms, and again, it's structurally expressive. It shows you what it's doing. It's telling the story of the structure, but it's not hidden behind, kind of like layers of, ostentatious ornamentation or anything like that too. So.
And I'm particularly curious about your answer, Juan, because you do so much work in the communities, and so much of your ideology comes from your work in the communities and how that takes
I think even this might surprise you, but just this piece or this question and responses just have me thinking in a different direction. That is, on one side, you have 3 architects sitting up here, but the fact is the team is enormous. And Ryan highlighted many of which that are here, but the piece about engineering, and I think that's another part of our city, right? There's something very real about the work here, and the interaction and collaboration between architects and engineers. You touched on the Sears and Willis, but I think it's very much a part of just the identity of this city. We often talk about, moments in our city that just stop us in our tracks. Many of those are engineering feats, and I often talk about the bridges.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're interested in architecture or not. You see the bridges going up, people stop and watch them. And I think there's moments in the concourse that have that just kind of stop you, right? And I think you take it in, and I think those are important. Like for me, coming back to the community, I think it's important that architecture speak to you. And certainly in the community work we do, it's because you want somebody to feel something. You want somebody to feel good about where they are. And I think that is all part of this exploration.
Thank you. Let's pivot a little bit to another question that's also much about context. Helmut Jahn's Concourse C is obviously an iconic space in Chicago and symbolizes O'Hare Airport to many, many visitors in Chicago. So I'm sort of curious, like within your process, how you thought about that, and it's your need to, it sets up an interesting design problem for you, how you respond to it, both connect to it and maybe innovate away from it. And so I'm sort of curious how that played into your overall process and thinking here.
Can you all hear me? I can just project.
Or here, do you want to?
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, you have a soft voice.
So I'm sure that Helmut wouldn't mind us telling this story, but when the projects were awarded after the competition, we reached out and we asked, any advice you'd give, and what do you think is important to preserve? And his response was, don't try to copy. It's a different time, and there are going to be aspects about the design that are inevitably going to be interrelated. But at this time, the airport and the city need something new. And so don't worry about it. That said, we did. We worried.
Not to. It's
Yeah.
hard.
We worried a lot about it. It's an amazing building. When people think of O'Hare, people think of Chicago sometimes, they think of that building in Terminal 1. Our approach, and Satellite 1 is connected directly to Concourse C, the building you're talking about, was to touch it as little as possible to preserve it. So what we did is we did a very careful analysis of the sectional configuration, the proportions of the building, circulation and the flows. And because the building needs to be connected for functional reasons, we basically used the circulation path that exists on the southern end of Concourse C. And then at the southern end, there's an apse at the end of that circulation path. Basically, the vault kind of terminates in a little dome, an apse. And we use that as a hinge in which you can kind of change your path of circulation and move onward to the new satellite. And so it's as respectful as it possibly can be, while also tapping into kind of the way it works, if that makes sense.
Well, and I'm assuming that it goes back to your first answer as well, in saying that was a terminal that at its time was a innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure that your innovation of this terminal looks back to that.
I hope so. Yes. Yeah.
I could add a little flavor of that too. And even, obviously designing this new concourse, we've been paying a lot of attention of, what the building looks like, kind of like, flying in, what you're going to see, again, from the exterior. But again, because we're so close to Concourse C, Helmut Jahn's concourses, we've also paid special attention to what you're going to see from that terminal looking to the building too. And so, there's a couple hold rooms at that southern end of the concourse. And so again, paying attention to, views out and the experiences that you're going to have within that space looking to our new built concourse as well.
So creating some continuity through view corridors.
Yeah, and again, like paying reverence to it, and again, like, just again, special attention to that space, our relation to it, from where our concourse is sitting in relation to that building. Yeah.
I would just add, even when you look at our concourse, the idea of structural expression, well, that's consistent with Helmut as well, but it's not a carbon copy, right? It has its own identity or its own new chapter in the story that is O'Hare, which I think that gives credence to what Helmut said. I also think just as time has moved on, even advancements in the way we look at buildings, right? And we think of what Helmut did and the way we explore natural light. It's advanced in a new way as we think about sustainability and what is the right amount of light, right? Whereas, is there too much? And I think that is just part of the natural progression of architecture as well, right?
So I must say, you all seem very aligned in your answers. And I find it interesting because you all are very strong designers in your own right. Has this alignment come over the course of the project, or was there a point early in the process where you sort of instigated dialogue around, because I'm sure this is a topic, both the inspiration and connection to the city, how you connect or don't connect to Helmut Jahn's work. How did that alignment come about?
Oh, Ann.
I know, sorry, hard question.
You asked that question because you're an architect. That's why, and Look, obviously, look, the beauty of the three firms is we bring different perspectives.
Yes.
And I would be disingenuous if I'm sitting up here and said, we agreed all the time, yeah.
Right.
No, it's the beauty in having different voices that we hope arrives at a better design, right? And through that comes fascinating dialogue. Yes. Disagreement, sure, but it's the idea that you're bringing these different ideas to the table, giving them voice, right? I often talk about it, if you don't give it voice, it never had a chance.
Yeah.
And I think that's been great part of this throughout. And even in the way that we work, and we were talking about this in these weeks leading up, you would be hard-pressed to know who works for which firm. And I think there's something truly wonderful about that, because it hasn't been the, sometimes, and we, like the default many times is, okay, this firm handles SD and then hand it over to this one. That hasn't been the case here. It's been very much everybody's involved in everything, and that has helped immensely.
Yeah, well said. I mean, and again, it goes beyond, that's obviously kind of like probably the intention from the get-go was like, yeah, we're going to be this like one large group, 100% collaborative. And again, like that message has kind of disseminated down to the teams. And so on a project this big, obviously it's going to have to get parsed out into different like sections, different groups of people working on different things. And even those teams are an amalgamation of employees from all three different firms. And again, we'll go to each other's offices, hold meetings in different spaces. So again, it does just foster that sense of, it's one big team. It's not necessarily three different offices, just working together on this one project.
And I asked that hard question because I can see evidence of each of you at that design, which means it has been a great process. So let's pivot now to talk a little bit about innovation in transportation. I'm kind of jealous because this is a very exciting time for you to get to work on a project like this. I think everybody knows there's been a lot of discussion about the future of transportation, how we fund it, how we use it, what the future will look like for all of us in that regard. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little, I think you mentioned it a little bit in your presentation, but if you could go a little deeper into the specific kind of innovations that you looked at and you knew were going to take root that you wanted to embed in this design.
It's a really good question. It's a very long answer. How much time do we have?
7 minutes.
So I'll say this. For a very long time, I think that the science of aviation design has been catching up to the way that airports are used. And many of the pain points I think that people experience when traveling are in part because the design didn't sometimes imagine the future and future-proof for it. And so when you think, for example, about rushing to your gate and a crowd of people waiting to board their own flight are flowing out into the circulation space, or there's a really long queue to get into the restrooms, again, never at O'Hare. One of the big innovations, I think, has been the degree to which computational analysis can, with a high degree of accuracy, model throughput, the way that people move through space and the space that they're required to do it efficiently. And so we have a team of aviation planners that are using really advanced software that look through many different use case scenarios to help inform the spatial design to optimize for day one and 50 years from now as throughput changes. There's one example as a tangent. In some of the images that we were showing, you may or may not have noticed that there was actually 2 lines of glass on the side of those gate lounges, the hold rooms. That second line of glass off of the facade is allowing for a high degree of flexibility for incoming passengers, arriving passengers to disembark while other planes are being boarded. And so, for example, that path allows for what's called dependencies to be avoided. And that means that when you're flying at O'Hare in a few years when this is built, your gate lounges are going to be more efficient, they're going to be less crowded, less congestion, and more comfortable. And so that's an example of this kind of trend or innovation that's being deployed in a very real way. On top of that, there is burgeoning data science, which is impacting every single industry in the way that buildings are used and operate to better improve performance. And that impacts the way that the airlines are going to be handling their hold rooms and sequencing. It impacts the way that concessions and retail will more efficiently get food to people that order it. It's going to mean that the building fundamentally functions better because real-time data is helping the building operators to understand how it's being used to constantly tune and improve things. So there's a couple examples.
Those are great examples. And I think data-driven design is sort of changing the way architects work in general, particularly on a project like this. Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions, about 5 minutes for questions from the audience.
So I've been a frequent traveler for 40, almost 50 years, and there's been nothing in my lifetime that has made the airport experience better than the creation and expansion over the last decade of these airport lounges, like the Amex Centurion Lounge or the Chase Sapphire Lounge. And for some reason, O'Hare is a desert with regard to these lounges. Atlanta, Dallas, JFK, LaGuardia, I could go on. They all have multiple ones. Chicago, nothing. So what is going on with that? Also, and what is there anything that is being done to address it? And then also, when I land in the international terminal after coming back from, I don't think there's any airport in the world where I feel like I'm walking as far before I arrive at I feel like I'm landing in Iowa and walking to Chicago. It's unbelievable. I don't understand what's happening there. If you could elucidate that. And then lastly, did you do anything to incorporate, like, PV panels or any kind of thing like that into your design? Sorry for the 3 questions, but thank you.
That's all right. I'll try to field them. So starting from the beginning about lounges, there are plans for the incorporation of lounges in the TAP expansion. And I would also note that there is also an ambition for what we're calling enhanced seating. So seating in areas that don't necessarily require a pass to get into the lounge for the average traveler in a way that creates pockets of space throughout the concourse that recreates some of those moments so that you can relax comfortably before your flight. Second question was? The long walk. So the way in which international arriving passengers will move through this is going to be different depending on the phase of construction for the project. And that's a long and complicated answer, but I'll tell you this. There is a lot of work being done by all parties involved, designers, engineers, folks at the city, to minimize the amount of time it takes to get from gate to processing. And to turn that time as you get from your gate to processing into one that is an elevated experience, one that is pleasant and as comfortable as it possibly can be. So good thumbs up. Third question was?
Whether there's any
PVs, sorry.
But also, I guess it looks like your satellite terminal requires, some sort of rapid transit connection to the main terminal. And I want, like, maybe, like they have it in Orlando or something like that, if you're familiar with it. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you also know at O'Hare, there's been this long, drawn-out, terrible saga with the connection via train out to Terminal 5. What are you doing to avoid that?
I'll say this. Things are happening. and when we're able to share them, we will. Photovoltaics, we're looking at lots of things, and it has to do with energy performance, operational energy, embodied carbon. We've looked at photovoltaics, we've looked at any number of sustainable measures. The fundamental goal is to design a building that is using the least amount of energy it can, and also to use the least amount of embodied energy that we can to build it, while also fundamentally meeting the requirements of the project.
In the spirit of keeping the planes on time, I'd like to say thank you to Ann, to Barrett, to Ryan, to Juan. A couple more folks who contributed. You saw Francisco running around here taking some pictures. He also was instrumental in bringing this together. And of course, the Chicago Department of Aviation for helping to make this program happen. Many more people in this room who contributed, who I won't go for a long list of names, but thank you very much. You know who you are. We appreciate you. To the CAC team for making the sound good and for bringing everybody through here, feeding you wine and cheese. Thank you. Have a great Friday night.
Real quick, ladies and gentlemen, the center is closed. The center is closed.